Well, we're certainly glad you all decided to stick around. This is a very special conversation between John Embry, Dave Kranzler, and Rory Hall. And this followed the interview that we just conducted with John. And this is a very casual conversation, and we hope that you learn something and we hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Quite frankly, Dave, I'm sort of counting the days until my holiday because I'm not positive it'll come off. That's how negative I am.
I got to tell you, I had lunch and met Ian Gordon for the first time in late March down in Scottsdale, and he told me he's been, as I'm sure you know way better than I do, he's been going down there for the winter for years.
Yep.
And he and his wife had storage lockers down there for their stuff. And he said they cleaned out their storage lockers and took everything back to Canada because he wasn't sure if they'd be able to get across the border to go back down there next year.
Well, he may well be right. Like, as I said, I take nothing for granted. I mean, every day that goes by that there's no disruption and life is good, I consider that a bonus.
And what's worrisome is that they've created, the U.S. media has just, the degree of propaganda has just gone through the roof. It's like, a couple days ago, the new home sales number was 17 standard deviations above what what the expectation was.
I was staggered by that number. Do you think that's real?
It's not real. An 8 standard deviation event is considered a black swan, and they want us to swallow the pill that the new home sales were 17 standard deviations beyond what was expected. I've written blog posts about it in the past, and the Census Bureau, their numbers are a complete train wreck. And then they do this train wreck data collection, and then they put it through their seasonal adjustment manipulations. It's the same thing as with the retail sales number that came out.
Yeah, I know, it was bogus. It's the whole thing's really irritating. I was sitting here trying to rationalize it, even though I knew it wasn't true. And I guess you could say that car sales and house sales are being, supported by the same ridiculous lending habits that got us in trouble 8 years ago.
Yes, that's correct. And actually, the auto sales are rolling over now. I just saw a graph. I'm going to try and blog it at some point. The percentage of cars that are underwater now versus the loan amount outstanding is close to 40%.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah, and they keep, the other thing that they're doing with the housing market is they're putting this narrative out there that it's difficult to get financing, and it's not. You can get a 3% down payment mortgage that Fannie and Freddie underwrite, or they guarantee, and they buy the mortgage. And they're making it sound like, you got to have a good credit score. Well, no, you can get that with a sub 600 credit score. And not only that, Fannie Mae, and I don't know if Freddie's doing this, I assume they are, Fannie Mae will rebate your closing costs and count that as part of your 3% down payment.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So what you guys are describing is 2008 with none of the problems fixed, and now we're doing a repeat with all this garbage already in the system.
Yeah,
What
but it's
could possibly
Fannie and
go
Freddie.
wrong?
So the government's, the citizens are going to be on the hook for it.
That's right. And
that's awful.
What's amazing is that the FHA stepped in, right at the end of 2008. They rolled out a 3.5% down payment mortgage, and their share of the mortgage market went from 2% to 20%. So it's not like, everyone says, oh, well, the subprime problem isn't there. No, the subprime problem is there. It's just, it's better disguised, and it's being underwritten by the government.
Interesting. There's one, like on the car subject, if you go to a movie in Canada, you're bombarded with 15 minutes of ads before the movie and the previews start. 80% of the ads are car ads. The whole thing, it baffles me.
They're running all those ads because, like Dave said, the market's rolling over.
I think so. It's just like in your face. It's unbelievable, actually.
Well, and then today the pending home sales report comes out, and it's 6 standard deviations above what was expected. So that's almost a black swan event. I mean, I just think that I will agree. In some markets, Denver's been hot as a pistol, but that's because you got a lot of people moving here from California, and they're moving into the suburban areas, and they're selling their $1 million 2,000 square foot home in California and buying a $500,000 or $600,000 2,000 square foot house here. And so the mid range market in Denver, in the suburbs anyway, in Denver proper, there's a ton of inventory building, but is tight. But if you look at the upper end, anything over 800,000, you can go into any neighborhood, and there's a couple houses per block that are on the market, and they're all reducing their prices pretty aggressively at this point. So I just realize the market's hot in some areas, and it's because of these loans, these disguised subprime loans. But it's nowhere as near as hot as the National Association of Realtors and the Census Bureau / government want us to believe it is.
It's fascinating because up here in Toronto, there's a housing mania, and the neighborhood I live in, the house prices have tripled in, I don't know, 10 years. And basically, I don't know how the young people, most of whom can't find decent jobs, I don't know who's buying these homes. Like, the whole thing is baffling to me.
That is exactly what is happening here in Nashville, John. And I've been asking that very same question of my neighbors and family and friends. It's like, okay, we've got an average apartment cost of $2,000 to $2,500 a month.
Right.
And they can't build enough of them. And then the average home is right around $175,000 or $200,000. Who is buying these houses? Where are they getting the jobs? And how are they funding this? I mean, if your mortgage or your rent is $2,000 a month, you got to be making bank.
Yeah, I know.
You've got to be making pretty decent money in order to support that.
Yeah, I know the whole thing is baffling to me. I mean, I know in Toronto and Vancouver, we've been the beneficiaries of enormous foreign inflows from China and all over the place, Russia, Brazil. But in smaller communities, I mean, they don't go there. So I don't know how they're doing it in the smaller communities. One thing that helps is much lower interest rates. Like, I come from Winnipeg, which the house prices didn't move for about 40 years, and then they tripled all because the rates dropped sharply.
Isn't that really called inflation? I mean,
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Everybody gets all excited that their home's value went, up by 18%, when they aren't realizing that that's 18% inflation.
I know. I tell you, it's all part and parcel of this massive inflation and, things. And we'll see how it all ends. I don't think well.
This is, like you guys are pointing out, there are pockets of hotness around the country, but there's also pockets that are starting to get demolished. I know a colleague of mine he actually moved from Nashville, Rory, to the west coast of Florida, and he had started looking around. He was going to buy a house starting, he started looking at the end of 2015, and all of a sudden he noticed that the inventories down there on the west coast of Florida, and the west coast of Florida had been hot as a pistol, had all of a sudden the inventories were building.
Yep.
And all of a sudden there were, prices were coming down. So he's renting down there, and he's been telling me he said like the Sarasota area has the highest inventory of homes on the market that he can recall ever seeing there. And so there's and the same thing, that guy Wolf Richter's done a good job following the San Francisco market, and especially the commercial, including multifamily real estate there, is starting to come down quickly. And I'm seeing the same thing here in Denver. There's so many new apartment buildings that have gone up. The rents are pretty high still, but you can get 1 to 2 months free. Plus, you can now get free underground parking. So what I think is going to happen is that these entities that have put up these multifamily luxury apartment buildings, they're going to have to start bringing down their rent prices very quickly and it's going to feed back into the housing market. And I think a lot of the homes that are being snapped up are being snapped up by investors who are looking to cash in on, well, I've got equity in my house, so I'm going to take a loan against that and buy another house and rent it out, and I can charge more in rent than it costs me to maintain the house on a monthly basis. All right, well, let's see how long that lasts when all of a sudden they've got their choice of apartments at a much lower rent, and the apartments are really nice.
Coming soon to a neighborhood near you.
And there was actually, John, I saw it on Zero Hedge I don't know, maybe even as much a month ago, and it said that the condo market in Toronto is already starting to crash.
Well, it should crash. I mean, you have never seen building like this. Like, it is staggering. And I mean, maybe not 90, but 75% of them are being bought by foreign money. I mean, the locals aren't shelling out for these prices. And there's just towers everywhere that didn't exist 10 years ago.
What's happening here is that I can get in my car right now and drive to downtown, and I guarantee you that there's at least 8 different cranes on 8 different projects in downtown Nashville right now today.
Well, this is interesting because I talked to my friend Murphy in Texas, and he says the same thing's going on there. And this is in a place where, the oil market should be having some impact, and yet they're building just enormous numbers of new structures.
Well, Houston's getting crushed. I think he's talking about Dallas.
Yeah, he's talking about Dallas. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, to me, that's just another indication of the errant monetary policy, because I think there's money that's being made available to develop these buildings, and in an Excel spreadsheet, the rates of return look great.
That's right.
Once the building goes up, try and rent them out. I mean, I know Denver is just flooded with commercial real estate buildings that have gone up or have been completed in the last year. And I could take you downtown and show you there's a couple buildings that are just outright empty. They can't get them leased.
Well, it's funny, Dave. Like, I just been studying this whole building boom in Toronto, which is one of the few things sustaining the economy here. And I just don't know what's going to happen when it ends, because like everything, it will end. And we'll see. I mean, to me, it would be catastrophic. I mean, the change in the amount of activity if the building boom stopped.
Oh, absolutely. And they know that. These guys.
Yeah, I know.
Has the marijuana tourism and the marijuana industry, has that all cooled off as far as the real estate market is concerned, Dave, there in Denver or in Colorado as a whole?
Like I said, the middle market in the suburban areas, I mean, houses, you put your house on the market and it goes in a week. But then that would be the kind of the suburban areas. If you go, or like where I live in central Denver, and the neighborhoods where there's homes, if you drive through them, there's plenty of for sale signs, and even in call it the $450 to $650 price range, or $450 to $750 price range, they're starting to reduce their prices. It kind of rhymes with what I was observing in the 2005 to 2008 period, where all of a sudden in central Denver, there were plenty of houses available to buy and to rent, and then the dynamic spread out to the suburbs. But I mean, it's just like Nashville right now. There's so many people that are moving here. Either Californians transplanting, or a lot of people are still moving here, especially from the East Coast, because of the legal marijuana.
Really?
Oh yeah. And that also became a whole bubble that prices for that stuff are coming down very quickly.
That's an interesting little piece of information right there. A marijuana bubble.
Well, and then there's going to be a bunch of other states that legalize it, and all the money that was invested here, because this was one of the first places. A lot of that money is going to be dead money.
Yep. Yeah, I predict by 2018, 2019 that you're going to see probably 10 to 15 states that have decriminalized marijuana completely, just like Colorado and several others.
I think they're trying to do it up here in Canada too. I think that's just an idea whose time has come.
Right, and it's just like the gambling. The municipalities and the states do it because they see the tax revenues that are possible.
Absolutely.
There you have
But
it.
the logical thing that John and I would say are, yeah, you're right, by 28 or 2019, that'll happen if the system is intact by then.
If it's not, then all bets are off. Well, we've been speaking with Mr. John Embry, who is the Chief Investment Strategist for Sprott Gold and Precious Minerals Fund. John, we certainly appreciate all the time and all your wisdom and knowledge.
Well, it's very kind. And it's, as I said, it's always a pleasure to chat with you guys. We must do it again.